In the last video, we mounted the scope and we bore sighted it at about 100 yards. So we got a nice sunny day here. It's just above freezing, no wind. So we're going to zero this. And in theory, you should be able to zero a weapon in one round. But we all know that we don't do that. You know, we use at least three to five probably is about average. And there's different schools of thought on this. You know, in the military they say fire a 3-round group, and then in the middle of that triangle, that's where you make your adjustment from. But if you have a good, you know, use the good fundamentals of marksmanship, and you know that that one shot went exactly where you wanted it to go, meaning your crosshairs were on the target when the sear broke and the round went down range, then you can make your adjustment off that. Some guys are more comfortable firing 2 rounds, but out here in some pretty deep snow, so I just tried to rig up a table, and I got a chair here sitting down in the snow. Got some blanket and a memory foam pad here. So when you're shooting a rifle for accuracy on a bench like this or in the prone, you want to touch the weapon as little as possible. Meaning, you know, you don't want to manhandle it and stuff like this, because the more you touch it, the more you're going to move it. Now that's if you have a rest or a bipod. Obviously, if you don't have that, you're going to have to use your arm to support it. But I don't want to, you know, touch this weapon that much. I want it to be in a steady position as much as possible. With my non-firing hand, I see a lot of guys grabbing it up here, grabbing the scope, whatever. There's no reason to touch the weapon up here with your non-firing hand. All you're going to do is risk moving the weapon. So with my non-firing hand, that being my left hand, I put that back here under the buttstock to make microscopic adjustments, you know, up, down, left, right. Can even grab my shirt right here and just squeeze my fist to move it up, or relax it to lower the buttstock down a little bit. Those little minute adjustments. So fundamentals of marksmanship, number one is steady position. That's probably the most important if you're going to rank them, at least in my opinion. And then proper sight alignment. With the scope, it's not that difficult. You just want to make sure that you have no shadowing on any side. You have a complete clear circle with no shadowing. So good sight alignment, and then your breathing is pretty important. You know, the experts say, you know, you take a breath in, and then when you let out your breath, there's kind of a natural pause there for a few seconds. You know, a normal human breathes about once every 4 seconds. So in just that normal pause, you breathe out, and then ideally you can fire at that moment. So taking the slack out of the trigger as you're exhaling, and as soon as you're done, then squeeze. And then the fourth fundamental is, of course, the trigger squeeze itself. So we don't want to be slapping the trigger. It's just gentle pressure, and a lot of weapons nowadays have that 2-stage trigger, so there's going to be some slack in it. You take that slack out, and then just, as long as your crosshairs are on the target, just continue slowly squeezing backwards until the weapon fires. I have a target out there at exactly 100 yards, just use the rangefinder. And I'm using the yards today. I'm trying to get away from my military habit of using meters for everything, since I'm a civilian now. So 100 yards, and I have a target. It has a bullseye that's exactly 3 inches in diameter, and the paper itself is 10 inches wide by 12.5 inches. So I can make my adjustments, you know, if I know those dimensions. Although I'm not going to be able to see the round from here, so I'm going to have to take the snowmobile and run down there real quick. It's been bore sighted. I'm going to put this on the max power. This is 4 to 12 power, so I'm going to put it on 12 power. And again, it's going to, unless you put this in a vise, you're not going to be able to hold those crosshairs perfectly steady on the center of that X, even with a rest, even with bipods. I mean, just your heartbeat alone is going to move it a little bit. So you have to get comfortable with that little bit of a wobble zone, as we call it. And So as long as that wobble zone stays within that center ring or that X ring, you're fine. You can continue squeezing the trigger, and then when the weapon fires, you know that it's gonna be in that 10 ring or X ring. And another important thing, as soon as you shoot, as soon as that weapon does fire, you should be able to call your shot, meaning you know if the crosshairs were slightly left or slightly high or whatever when the weapon fired, and you should be able to call that, so there should be no surprises, you know, when you have a flyer. And everybody has flyers, but you should know when you have one. All right, so I'm going to take one round. I'm using some Hornady. Again, this is a 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm using Hornady American Whitetail 129 grain internal lock. These are the same exact rounds that my son used a couple months ago to drop an elk at over 400 yards away. So pretty impressive with the terminal ballistics on this round. So I'm going to go ahead and probably use this same round for my hunting adventures. And this box costs $29.99, so that's right at $1.50 a round. So not cheap, but definitely less expensive than a lot of other rounds on the market today. It's on safe. I'll use this minute to talk about natural point of aim as well. So what I'm going to do is when I get lined up on my target, that's not high enough. When I get all lined up on my target, crosshairs around the center of the target, I'm going to close my eyes for a couple seconds, and then when you open your eyes back up, if your crosshairs are not still on the middle of the target, then you need to readjust your body. Don't just move the gun, reposition your body a little bit, otherwise you're going to be fighting the gun. You don't, like I said, you don't want to use muscles. You want to use your muscles as little as possible. I'm just barely using these 3 fingers here to pull it back slightly into my shoulder, and with my left hand I'm just grabbing under here to make little adjustments. I don't want to touch this gun too much. Proper sight alignment, I have no shadowing. Watch my breathing. And I'm going to slowly take the slack out of the trigger. If you notice, my finger is still pulled all the way to the back. Try to make a mental habit of doing that. That will keep you from slapping the trigger and letting it go. Just pull it back and hold it to the rear. And if you're firing a semi-auto, hold it for a second, and then when you release it, you'll hear that click, resetting the sear. Okay, at this point, I'm going to get that round out of there to let the chamber cool down a little bit, because I don't want to get it too hot, because it's 33 degrees out here, so that inside of that chamber is probably 100 degrees right now. So I don't want to put another round in there right away if I'm not going to fire right away, because that's going to increase the temperature of that round and could affect at 100 yards. It's not going to move it much, but we're trying to get a good accurate zero right here. So again, I can't see where that round hit, so I'm going to have to drive down there. Weapons on safe, weapons unloaded. It's not unloaded. Take the magazine out. All right, so we'll run down there real quick. look at that. Okay, wow, bore sighting truly pays off. Like I said, you don't have to bore sight, but if you don't, you just throw a scope on there and go to the range. You're not going to want to start off at 100 yards. You're going to start off at 50 or even 25 yards to make sure you're on the paper. And then, you know, I have this longboard here, so, you know, as long as my windage was good, the elevation, you know, you can adjust as you go back. So when that round broke, I felt like I was just maybe, you know, a 1/4 inch low and a 1/4 inch right. So that means I'm going to move it up about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to move it left about 1 1/4 inches. And I have 1/4 minute adjustments on both elevation and windage, so we'll make those and then we'll take another shot. We were 3/4 of an inch low, so we'll make that first. So we want to come up. So how I remember it is, if you want the strike of the bullet come up, I'm going to unscrew this, you know, like to let it come up. That's my how I remember it. Most scopes are that way. Most scopes, if you turn counterclockwise, it raises the strike up. There's a few out there that don't, but I always think that those ones are backwards. So I'm going to come up 3 clicks, because like I said, it's a 1/4 minute of angle for each click. So up 3, and we need to go left about 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches. So again, I'm going to screw it, the windage now, I'm going to screw it clockwise. So screwing it in, pushing the bullet left. I know it actually moves crosshairs, you know, to the right, but that's how I remember. So I'm going to come move the strike of the round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks to the left. All right, so we'll let up one more round and then see if this one gets us in the X-ray. Okay, so we're not quite zero. This one went the other way. So I'm not going to make excuses, but this is a brand new gun. I've literally fired 2 rounds from it now, so I'm probably not going to make a whole lot more adjustments. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire another 3 rounds or so, and then I'm going to clean the gun really well, cleaning out the bore, and then I'll probably fire another 4 or 5 rounds to break in that barrel, and before I make any more adjustments. But 100 yards, and we're within 2 shots, we're within 1 inch. And this, like I said, this is small, it's only a 3-inch circle, but definitely we want to be within a 1 inch. We want to have a 1 inch group or less. This is a high, pretty good gun and with a pretty good scope, so it's definitely capable of sub-minute of angle groups. So that could be me as well. Again, I'm not making excuses, but that's my procedure for zeroing a rifle. Bore sighting is going to save you some ammo. If you don't bore sight, then you want to just get closer to the target than 100 yards. Make sure you're on paper and start making those adjustments. Remember though, if you're at 50 yards, you have to make the adjustments twice as many. Now, 1 click is only going to move it 1/8 of an inch instead of a 1/4 inch, what it does here at 100 yards. Alrighty, as always, thanks for watching. Put any comments or questions or below in the